In the opulent halls of billionaire Victor Langston's mansion, maids came and went like fleeting shadows, each driven away by his enigmatic new wife Celeste, whose icy demeanor and impossible demands broke even the most seasoned help, until Maria, a quiet single mother with nothing to lose, stepped into the chaos and did what no one else could. Victor Langston's estate sprawled across acres of pristine land, a monument to his success in tech and finance. At 52, he was a man who had everything: money, power, influence. Yet his personal life had always been a revolving door of failed relationships. His first marriage ended in a quiet divorce, his second in a public scandal. When he married Celeste Moreau, a 34-year-old former model with a sharp mind and sharper tongue, the world took notice. She was breathtaking, poised, and carried an air of untouchable mystery. But behind the mansion's gilded walls, something was amiss. No maid could stay in their employ for more than a month. Celeste, it seemed, was the reason. The staff turnover began almost immediately after Celeste moved in. Maids, experienced and novice alike, would leave pale-faced, some in tears, others in silent fury. The agency that supplied the staff was at its wits' end. Complaints were vague but consistent. Celeste was impossible to please. She demanded perfection. Floors polished to a mirror shine, meals prepared with Michelin-star precision, linens folded with military exactness. But it wasn't just her standards. There was something about her presence, cold, calculating, almost predatory, that unnerved even the most stoic workers. Whispers spread through the agency. Celeste wasn't just difficult. She was relentless, as if testing the limits of those around her. Maria Delgado, a 38-year-old single mother, heard about the Langston job through a friend at the agency. She wasn't the typical candidate. Most maids sent to the estate were polished professionals with years of experience in high-end households. Maria, however, was a part-time cleaner who had spent the last decade piecing together odd jobs to support her teenage daughter, Sophia. Her life was a grind. Long hours, late nights, and a constant battle to keep the bills paid. But the Langston job paid triple her usual rate, and Maria needed the money. Sophia's medical bills, from a chronic condition that required regular treatments, were piling up. Against her friend's warnings, Maria took the job. On her first day, Maria arrived at the estate with a practical mindset. She wasn't there to make friends or impress anyone. She was there to work. The head housekeeper, a stern woman named Margaret who had somehow survived Celeste's reign for 6 months, gave Maria a brisk tour. The rules were clear. Follow Celeste's instructions to the letter, don't speak unless spoken to, and never, under any circumstances, enter the West Wing's private study unless explicitly told to do so. Maria nodded, her face calm but her mind racing. The West Wing. Why was it off limits? She pushed the thought aside. She couldn't afford curiosity. Celeste's first interaction with Maria was unremarkable. She appeared in the dining room as Maria polished silverware, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. She was tall, her dark hair pulled back tightly, her eyes scanning Maria like a predator sizing up prey. "The crystal glasses," Celeste said, her voice smooth but edged with steel, "must be spotless. I can see smudges from here." Maria rechecked the glasses. They were flawless. Still, she nodded and redid the task under Celeste's watchful gaze. That night, Maria went home exhausted but determined. She'd dealt with demanding bosses before. Celeste was just another. Over the next week, Maria began to understand why others had fled. Celeste's demands were not just meticulous. They were erratic. One day, she insisted the entire kitchen be scrubbed with a specific brand of cleaner that was nearly impossible to find. The next, she changed the menu for a dinner party hours before guests arrived, berating Maria for not anticipating her whims. She'd leave cryptic notes, unsigned, written in sharp, slanted handwriting, demanding tasks like rearranging furniture in a guest room that hadn't been used in months. Maria complied without complaint, her focus on the paycheck and Sophia's needs. But there was something else. Celeste seemed to thrive on control, watching Maria's every move, testing her resilience. Once, Maria overheard Celeste speaking to Victor in hushed tones in the library. "She's lasted longer than the others," Celeste said, her voice carrying a strange mix of amusement and irritation. Victor's response was inaudible, but Maria felt a chill. Were they talking about her? She shook it off, telling herself it didn't matter. She needed the job. By the end of her second week, Maria noticed patterns. Celeste's demands spiked when Victor was away on business, which was often. When he was home, she was almost pleasant, her sharpness dulled by his presence. Victor himself was distant but polite, a man consumed by work. He barely acknowledged the staff, his focus on his empire or occasionally on Celeste. Maria began to suspect the dynamic between them was more complex than it appeared. Celeste's behavior wasn't just about perfectionism. It was about power. Then came the incident that changed everything. One evening, Maria was cleaning the second-floor hallway when she heard a crash from the west wing. Against her better judgment, she followed the sound. The door to the private study, the forbidden room, was ajar. Inside, Celeste stood over a shattered vase, her face pale, her hands trembling. Papers were strewn across the floor, and a locked drawer in the desk was pried open. Celeste's eyes met Maria's, and for a moment, Maria saw something she hadn't expected. Fear. "Don't move," Celeste snapped, her voice unsteady. Maria froze, unsure whether to retreat or stay. "You shouldn't be here," Celeste continued, but her tone lacked its usual venom. She seemed rattled, almost human. Maria, acting on instinct, knelt to pick up the shards of the vase. "I'll clean this up," she said quietly. Celeste stared, as if weighing her options, then nodded. "Do it quickly. And don't touch the papers." Maria worked in silence, her mind racing. The papers were financial documents, bank statements, property deeds, and what looked like a prenuptial agreement. She didn't read them, but the glimpse was enough to raise questions. Why was Celeste in here, breaking into a locked drawer? And why was she so shaken? Maria finished cleaning and left without a word, but the encounter lingered. Celeste didn't fire her, as Maria had expected. Instead, she began to watch Maria more closely, her demeanor shifting from hostility to something harder to define. Curiosity, perhaps. Over the next few weeks, Maria's role in the household evolved. Celeste began assigning her tasks that required more trust, sorting personal correspondence, organizing schedules, even delivering messages to Victor's associates. It was as if Celeste was testing her loyalty, probing for weaknesses. Maria remained professional, her focus unwavering. She didn't ask questions, didn't pry, even when Celeste's behavior grew stranger. Late at night, Maria would hear footsteps in the west wing, or find Celeste pacing the halls, her phone pressed to her ear, speaking in low, urgent tones. One night, Maria overheard a conversation that confirmed her suspicions. Celeste was on the phone in the library, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's getting too close," she said. "If he finds out, it's over. We need to move faster." Maria, dusting a nearby shelf, froze. Who was Celeste talking to? And what was Victor getting close to? She didn't linger, but the words stuck with her. Something was happening in this house, something bigger than a difficult employer. Maria's breaking point came not from Celeste, but from Sophia. Her daughter's condition worsened, requiring a costly procedure. Maria requested a day off to be with Sophia during a hospital visit. Celeste's response was cold. "If you leave, don't expect to come back." Maria stood her ground, her voice steady. "My daughter comes first. Fire me if you have to." For the first time, Celeste seemed taken aback. She didn't fire Maria. Instead, she granted the day off, albeit grudgingly. When Maria returned, something had shifted. Celeste began confiding in her, not as a friend, but as someone she could control. She revealed fragments of her past, a childhood marked by instability, a modeling career that left her jaded, and a marriage to Victor that was more strategic than romantic. Maria listened without judgment, sensing that Celeste needed to unburden herself. But the revelations came with a price. Celeste began to rely on Maria, assigning her tasks that blurred the line between maid and accomplice. One such task involved delivering a sealed envelope to a man at a downtown hotel. Maria hesitated but complied, driven by the need to keep her job. The man, a sharply dressed lawyer named Richard, seemed nervous, glancing over his shoulder as he took the envelope. Maria didn't ask questions, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being drawn into something dangerous. When she returned, Celeste was waiting. "You did well," she said, her tone almost approving. "You're different from the others." Maria's instincts told her to quit, but she couldn't. The money was too good, and Sophia's treatment was ongoing. She began keeping a journal, documenting Celeste's requests and her own observations. It was a precaution, a way to protect herself if things went south. She noticed more inconsistencies. Large sums of money transferred to offshore accounts, late-night meetings with unfamiliar men, and Victor's growing distance from Celeste. Maria suspected Celeste was hiding something from her husband, something that could ruin them both. The turning point came 6 months into Maria's employment. Victor returned from a business trip unexpectedly early, catching Celeste off guard. Maria was in the kitchen when she heard raised voices from the West Wing. She crept closer, unable to resist. Victor was furious, clutching a stack of papers, the same ones Maria had seen in the study. "You thought I wouldn't find out," he shouted. Celeste's response was calm, almost defiant. "You don't understand what's at stake, Victor. You never have." Maria didn't hear the rest, but the next morning Victor was gone again, and Celeste was a wreck. She summoned Maria to the study, her face pale but composed. "I need you to do something for me," she said, handing Maria a flash drive. "Keep this safe. Don't look at it, don't give it to anyone. Not even Victor." Maria took the drive, her heart pounding. She wanted to refuse, but Celeste's eyes held a desperation Maria hadn't seen before. Against her better judgment, she agreed. That night, Maria broke her own rule. She plugged the drive into her old laptop, her curiosity outweighing her caution. The files were encrypted, but one document was accessible, a draft of a legal agreement transferring half of Victor's assets to an unknown entity. Maria's blood ran cold. Was Celeste planning to betray Victor? Or was she protecting herself from something worse? Maria copied the document to her journal, then hid the drive in a safe deposit box. She didn't know what she was dealing with, but she knew she needed leverage. The next few weeks were tense. Celeste grew paranoid, checking on Maria constantly, questioning her loyalty. Victor, meanwhile, hired a private investigator, a man who lingered around the estate asking pointed questions about Celeste's activities. Maria stayed under the radar, performing her duties flawlessly while gathering information. She learned that Celeste had a history of questionable alliances, including ties to a shady investment group with a reputation for fraud. The pieces were falling into place. Celeste was using her marriage to Victor to secure her own future, but at what cost? Maria's moment of truth came when Victor confronted her directly. He cornered her in the garden, his face haggard. "I know you've been close to Celeste," he said. "Tell me what she's planning." Maria hesitated. She owed Victor nothing, but she owed Celeste even less. Still, she thought of Sophia, of the money, of the flash drive hidden away. "I don't know everything," she said carefully, "but I can help you find out." Victor nodded, his expression grim. He didn't trust her, but he had no choice. Maria's plan was simple but risky. She would confront Celeste, using the flash drive as leverage to force the truth. She waited until Victor was away again, then approached Celeste in the study. "I know about the accounts," Maria said, holding up a printout of the document she'd found. "I know you're planning something. Tell me, or I go to Victor." Celeste's face hardened, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "You think you're so clever," she said. "You have no idea what you're in the middle of." What followed was a confession that turned Maria's world upside down. Celeste wasn't just after Victor's money. She was working with a group that had been manipulating his company's stock for years, bleeding his empire dry. The marriage was a cover, a way to gain access to his inner circle. But Celeste had miscalculated. Victor was smarter than she'd thought, and he was closing in. The flash drive contained evidence of her involvement, evidence she needed to destroy before Victor's investigator found it. Maria listened, her mind racing. She could turn Celeste in, but that would mean losing her job, maybe worse. Or she could play along, using the information to secure her own future. In the end, Maria chose a T.